Okay. Hi there, everybody. It's my huge pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Sela Panapasa. She is a research scientist here in the Research Center for Group Dynamics in ISR. So she's our first ISR speaker. I'll say a few words about Dr. Panapasa's education. So she has a PhD in sociology and demography from Brown University, and she did a BS at Johnson and Wales University, and that was in computer systems and management. Dr. Panapasa was a National Institute on Aging postdoctoral fellow here in our Population Studies Center, where she worked with a very famous sociologist named Al Hermelin. So a couple of you may know of him. Dr. Panapasa is a native Pacific Islander, so she has connections to both Fiji and Tonga. And a fun fact I learned about Tonga today is that apparently Tongan society was matriarchal. And still is, so good for them. Dr. Panapasa's research focuses on the role that socio-demographic change plays in the health and well-being of Pacific Island populations across the life course. And she is just totally gung-ho and committed to improving the health of Pacific Island populations, both after they migrate or emigrate to the US and also in the Pacific Basin. She's deeply involved in implementing policy changes to benefit these communities. And along with her many peer-reviewed publications, she's written a great number of reports to US federal agencies. She's received multiple honors and awards for her leadership and research, and the one with the most fitting title is called Stars of Oceania Health Leadership Award from the University of Hawaii. Dr. Panapasa's research is funded by many places, most notably the National Institutes of Health. She's constantly traveling to serve on government and scientific panels aimed at improving the health and the knowledge about Pacific Island communities. For example, presently she's serving on the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine study on racial and ethnic health equity. Dr. Panapasa is a scientist and an activist and one of the most hardworking and impactful members of our ISR community. So let's warmly welcome Dr. Panapasa.
Noa ia ma'aloe lele, talofa lava, and bulavinaka. Greetings to all, to this final seminar led by Dr. Straussman. And with that, I would like to thank you for those kind words of introduction. Social behaviors evolve faster than humans do, the case of Pacific populations. The topic I've chosen in some way aligns with the theme of the speaker series for the term, but more importantly for me, it has an ongoing question I'm grappling with, that I grapple with, and also a quest, a journey toward making a difference. The image you have in front of you is the view from my paternal grandmother's village. That is the island of Rotuma. And the greetings I shared in the beginning represents my multi-ethnic Pacific Island heritage. And with time at the end, I have an inspiring story that began and remains in the island of Rotuma. And It is what inspires me and my work. So this presentation is an opportunity for me to weave together and tell a story that is both personal and professional to me. And so I hope you will find the information useful and you will be able to see the intersections where they intersect, both as part of my own personal lived experience as a Pacific person and also as a professional based here at ISR and the US. So Pacific populations have long been observed to suffer a high burden of metabolic diseases, including obesity, type 2 diabetes, and gout. Social and economic changes since the end of World War II have impacted diet, activity levels, and behavioral changes faster than human evolution can accommodate the new demands these shifts place on biological systems. In critique of the Thrifty Genotype hypothesis, this presentation will systematically examine how the changing demographic, economic, food, political, and built environments in Pacific Island countries drive the high prevalence and risk for non-communicable diseases, disability, and premature mortality among these populations. So in front of you is a map of the Pacific. This is where the first part of my presentation is going to be based. And as you can see, it is spread across the island countries. These are sovereign countries with the exception of a few territories, including the US territory of Guam, Mariana Islands, and American Samoa, as well as the Compact of Free Association state nations represented by the Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, and Palau. But for the purposes of data collection, reporting, and sort of a way of describing and characterizing the populations of the Pacific, they are summarized and grouped into three areas that are represented by Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia. So recently, as just a few, maybe a month ago, a few weeks ago, the Non-Communicable Disease Risk Collaborative published a paper titled Worldwide Prevalence of Obesity based on a BMI greater than or equal to 30 in adults age 20 years and older. And the areas or countries which with the highest prevalence of obesity, obese adults, is the area that this talk is about. And it is represented by my purple arrow, which is pointing to the that sort of segment of the graph. And those are the Pacific Island, they are all Pacific Island countries. The takeaway point is that there are 17 Pacific Island countries with the highest prevalence of obesity, and with American Samoa having the highest, followed by Tonga for females. And for males, it's again, American Samoa having the highest, followed by Nauru. But as you can see, as a country with the highest prevalence, 80% of the adult population is obese. And it ranges from at least 20–30% of a total PI country with that is obese. And here's an example, an illustration of that major shift and change. To your left is a photograph of a Samoan taupo with a toinga, an ornamental headdress made out of human hair. And that image photograph was captured in 1908. And if we fast forward to present day Pacific or US Pacific Islander, you have the image of the same Samoan taupo with her toinga. But this time her toinga is made out of coconut husk. And she is there performing and is being accompanied by male dancers, and it is a celebration. This is a very common image. If you have the opportunity to celebrate and be part of a Polynesian, Samoan, Pacific Islander celebration, you can almost see the excitement, the enthusiasm, and the joy as part of the celebration. But more importantly is the change in size between and how that change to today is, again, continues to reinforce what the evidence from is showing, that Pacific people continue to be among the most obese in the world. And so part of this change is derived from what I would borrow from the anthropological evolutionary literature, and also in the sociological literature, psychology, and evidence from work in psychology on changing norms and values. And as you can see, norms are shared, specific behavioral standards or rules in a society, while values are those overarching principles that determine what is considered good or desirable. And I will touch on some of these and examines how these changes in norms within Pacific society and culture is contributing to this, the obesity epidemic. But without some background, I would like to also ground the work on this demographic shift in the island populations, and share with you the demographic transition model, which is a phenomenon theory that is widely understood and used in the work on populations and changes within population dynamics. And basically what we have seen is these shifts as a result of changes in stages of a population's growth, development, with improvements where we see initially high levels of mortality, and how that basically declines with improvements and changes in roles in women and men, and improvements in economics that is contributing to an increase in growth of the population. Along with that is the epidemiologic transition model, where we see this transition which affects the size of a population and population growth, where mortality is on a decline, changing patterns in fertility and mortality, leading to increases in life expectancy or a decline in life expectancy as we see in the final stages. And so so as part of my thinking, I was pleased to learn from Dr. Straussman this mismatch hypothesis, which aligns well with the talk and an issue that I continue to grapple with, and that is this period or this experience where the capacity of organisms to adapt to their environment is sometimes outpaced by the speed and the scale of environmental change. And that, I think, speaks directly to the experiences in our Pacific Island countries, but unfortunately that experience is accelerated because of the size of the population and the fact that they are isolated and concentrated in small geographical areas. So just imagine all this influx of modernization, changing values and behaviors as part of this desire and need to embrace new ideas, mostly Western ideas and goods, services, and an economic structure that is shifted from agricultural and to a cash-based economy. And so as part of the mismatch hypothesis, here are some examples, concrete examples of the drivers in the case of the Pacific. So this is the reality in the Pacific that is contributing to the growing obesity epidemic and NCD. Dense caloric foods easily available, they're inexpensive, they're widely used, integrated, and consumed by our Pacific communities, which is also, there's a shift with the cash economy, the convenience of transportation, access to motor vehicles, and the convenience of a phone and television, etc., for entertainment, increased sedentary lifestyle. Air pollution in these urbanized cities, so there's again an expansion of urbanization within the island countries, leading to increased urbanization, increased ownership of vehicles for mobility and transportation, and that is also affecting the quality of air in the islands, especially cities. Unclean water is also leading to emerging infectious diseases and even death as of recently as a result of drinking unclean water, whether it's out because the water is either derived from rivers and streams where you're dealing with, runoffs, whether it's a result of pesticides or even animal waste. And along with that, we have problems with drugs, tobacco, and alcohol is entering the islands and is present. Food insecurity is real as population grows and access to healthy foods and is not easily available or even affordable, given the competition with substitute products or processed foods that is imported. Infrastructure is also weak. Unfortunately, the healthcare system is struggling to cope with the demands of sickness, illness in the population. And in a number of countries, imagine where cancer is present, but there isn't an oncologist on the island to treat and diagnose a person who has a type of cancer. So the treatment, the options available to them is either you travel off island to seek care, or you're able to secure some subsidized funding from the local government to help offset that cost. A common response in a case where there is a severe disease that is not cannot be treated on island is to perhaps opt to remain and accept the fate of dying prematurely. And last but not least is poverty, poor nutritional standards that is preventing people from their from having access to healthy, nutritious foods and drinking water. So here's just a few images of the reality today. The ocean and the coastal areas are being polluted. And, again, part of that problem, when you think of tourism, which is a major source to the economy, there's this ongoing and increased production of waste products by way of, plastic containers that is not only being disposed of and not treated and handled, disposed of carefully, is ending up in the ocean, in water streams, and even on land. That is an image of a road right there in Fiji, Suva City. As you can see, the congestion, but again, not only that it is contributing to air pollution, noise, and just the costs associated with the maintenance of these the vehicles. I couldn't resist, as I've learned very recently, deaths as a result of unhealthy, unclean drinking water. And how ironic when Fiji water is widely distributed across the globe. And here we are, there are settlements, there are people, children, families, households that are subjected to this quality of water. And the other image of landslides, and again, a result, the changing, of course, climate change, the changing temperature and conditions in the region, and deforestation due to expansion of urban living and housing and business, that there is this, landslides is not quite as common. And I did want to just offer a few examples. Some of these choices weren't available when before I left the island. But as you can see, corporations are present and very visible and real in the islands with McDonald's, Bula, greetings from Fiji to McDonald's, as well as Coca-Cola. There's our beautiful Fiji water. So I would consume more Fiji water in Fiji than I do here, because it is cheaper, it is far more inexpensive than the price here in the US. But unfortunately, the other problem is I get frowned upon by local friends and colleagues and family members. Why are you drinking Fiji water instead of Coca-Cola? And, for very obvious reasons, but it's unfortunate that again, this value, it's also status, so they expect me to drink Coca-Cola and serve me Coca-Cola, then Fiji water as their guest back home in the islands. And the island is also producing its own cigarettes. It's probably cheaper than your Benson and Hedges and the imported cigarettes, but this is happening, so it's easily available. And even local alcohol, whether it's rum, beer, wine. Wine is being produced locally. I couldn't resist. I've added a meat product, which is turkey tail. A package of turkey tail, which is a major source of supposedly meat and protein, but we know that all it is oils, and that is the glands of the turkey that is used to preen its feathers with, and that's all it is. And if you ask me for the recipe, the common recipe for preparing turkey tail in the islands is you fry the meat, the turkey tail, and it's deep fried in oil. So a recent study looked at tried to capture some of the changing norms toward food choices in Fiji. And it's unfortunate, because they're constantly bombarded, have access to the convenience of radio, movies, television, and some of the examples that emerged from this study sort of highlighted, meat signifies affluence, vegetables are for the poor, junk foods and fast foods are delicious for the affluent and everyone. Men and boys need to eat more. Why? Because they are more involved in labor that is physically demanding. The bigger body sizes of family members represents a successful mother's life. You can expect to breastfeed. Breastfeed mothers is a need to eat, so they would have to eat more for two. Some of the these are some of the examples of the changing norms and attitudes toward food. And if in fact we know that the solution, remedy for these preventable diseases is a lifestyle change toward food, as well as increased physical activity, we need to do a better job with addressing these changing norms. I'm going to focus on Fiji as an example to illustrate the point. Part of the reason for doing this is because data, whether it's administrative data, survey data on the Pacific Island countries, is limited. The quality of the data is also questionable, and the availability in terms of how often it's conducted and data is collected is pretty sparse and inconsistent. So here's an example of the Fiji path through industrial development, where I've tried to capture, to illustrate the change in life expectancy since the 1980s. As you can see, I've captured these different points where, later industrial and post-industrial growth and impact has made a difference or is having an effect on the population's dynamic. And more recent statistics shows that life expectancy at age 40 by sex from 2016 to 2021, as you can see, there's a steady decline where someone who was born today, who is age 40 in 2021 has 28 years for males remaining, or for females, 31 years remaining, but again, a decline from 2016. And this figure provides distribution of the number of deaths by all cause and for all ages and by and sex from 2016 to 2021. And here's another good example of the mismatch hypothesis, where, as you can see, the large proportion across each of the years that's represented by the aqua green color is your non-communicable diseases, and that injury and infectious disease is represented by the smaller bars at the very top. And if you ask me, so what are the leading causes of these deaths for that same time period? And here we are, as you would expect, as this is consistent across the globe, circulatory system is the leading cause of death, and the mortality rate is highest for that disease, for heart disease, cardiovascular disease, heart-related disease, followed by endocrine diseases such as diabetes and gout, diseases related to the metabolic system, and then cancer. And then we find infectious and respiratory system lagging far behind, but they are still present. So that is the reality, is where you have this ongoing present non-communicable disease or intersection of non-communicable diseases and infectious diseases occurring simultaneously. And then in 2021, we get to see the increase of deaths as a result and due to COVID, So these changes in lifestyle remain outside of the evolutionary norm. From a biological perspective, evolutionary change is a gradual process of selective survival, and the environmental changes in the island populations and island countries is outpacing what the human body is able to adapt to and handle. And these are the examples I had mentioned earlier, whether it's food choices or transitions from a subsistence farming economy to a cash economy, transportation, and the emergence of food deserts as a result of poverty and high costs with imported goods, which are certainly cheaper and very convenient for use. So I am going to transition to the US Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander experience, which is where much of my work is based on. And it is based on a segment of 1.6 million people in the United States, or US 50 states. And that is a size of the population that represents less than 5%, 0.5% of the total US population. So the health challenges faced by Pacific peoples here are very similar. It is, as I would argue, also consistent with the mismatch hypothesis. And again, very similar challenges and issues faced by Pacific Island communities here in the US. And one of the challenges is this an ongoing challenge and problem which we are now sort of faced with and bearing the effects of, is that statistics, data prior to 1997 were inadequate. The population was either classified as an other category, and if you look at the federal statistical reporting, it is either a dot, a dash, or a star, and that you read the fine print at the bottom and it says cases too small for reliable estimates. And here's the common reference to the population is that it is invisible. And the people, Pacific people themselves, would report that they feel invisible. And I would like to add, this is the only population in the US where you have an indigenous group, a migrant group from the territories, and an immigrant group from the independent countries. This is important in demographic research because of the effects of selectivity on who and when they enter the US. So this all changed in 1997 thanks to the leadership and advocacy work of community, where they were able to convince the Office of Management and Budget, which is based in the Office of the President, to revise the US federal statistics standards for the collection, tabulation, and reporting of data on the US population by race and ethnicity. And this is the result. For the first time in 1997, data on Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders was mandated, required for the collection and reporting by the federal statistical agencies, including the US Census, economic, and all HHS, and other economic agencies. So that helped me with my work. For the first time in the country, we were able to examine and understand Native Hawaiian mortality with access to administrative data on deaths for disaggregated Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander populations. And what we found is that Native Hawaiians as a group, racial group in combination, had much more rapid entry into higher mortality. Native Hawaiians also had much higher number of expected deaths than whites. And compared to whites, Native Hawaiians and Blacks face similar challenges regarding infant and early life mortality. Following that work, I had the opportunity of piloting and conducting a Pacific Islander health study in 2012. And it is, to the best of my knowledge, the first PI study that was that used a complex design, a multi-stage probability sample of Samoans and Tongans in California. And the success of the study, I'm not going to go into the details of the process with training and administration of the study, but we had an excellent response rate, extremely low item non-response rate, and the data was weighted so we could have representative statistics of the population for California. And this work was instrumental in convincing the Department of Health and Human Services and the National Center for Health Statistics to conduct the first ever, in 2014, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander National Health Interview Survey. A little background about the NHIS. It is probably approaching its 60th year. For the last 60 years, the National Health Interview Survey was conducted every year to monitor the health of the US population. And unfortunately, over those years, even when trying to pull the data, the data was inadequate, and it did not yield sufficient case size to be able to learn about the health of the NHPI population. So in 2014, this was designed and conducted and was also very successful. And it, for the first time, we were able to look at health outcomes And since it was pattern modeled after the National Health Interview Survey conducted in 2014, we had comparable measures to be able, for the first time, look at health outcomes and health conditions, healthcare utilization, and health risk behaviors of the NHPI population. And another example, a more recent example, just looking at diagnosed non-communicable diseases by nativity. Here we are for the first time ever. I mean, this is the first time we are able to look at NHPI, different health outcomes and differences by nativity, and in comparison to other US racial and populations. So this is all very exciting, but I do want to add that recently OMB, Office of Management and Budget, did provide release to the public new standards, updated its standards from 1997 to provide new standards for the collection and tabulation and reporting of federal statistics on the US population. And the two changes, as you can see, few changes. First and foremost, notice how Hispanic or Latino is now part of this one question. It's no longer a two-part question, where are you Hispanic, yes or no, or non-Hispanic? And then you go into the list of other options for race. Hispanic is now combined together with the other racial populations. I would also like to add, for the first time, Middle Eastern or North African is now a distinct racial population and has been removed from the white population, which traditionally that has been the standard. And for the Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander population, we were able to convince them to remove "and other." It is not Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. It is now Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. And there is a tremendous support and this additional information to be able to look at granular data, disaggregate these broad racial data, and look at the subgroups in future work. So I have, in concluding, it is clear that the changes that is occurring in the Pacific is growing, is rapid and quite intense. The challenge is huge because of the costs associated, the distance, and right now there's a lot of external intervention and interest in the Pacific, not only because of its resources being located in the Pacific Ocean, but also its land and other minerals. And this is the, the factors in the Pacific, the challenges very similar here in the US. The difference for me is that in the Pacific, they have a lot of data, small population, tremendous opportunity to collect and learn from high quality data. Here in the US, we're just making small inroads, but I think the path moving forward is one that is positive, and I remain hopeful, and being present here at ISR gives me the opportunity to be able to address some of these data gaps and hopefully provide the needed evidence on the health and well-being of the NHPI population in the US. It is doable, and I'm only excited for moving forward. So with that, I would like to thank you and show off the richness and rich heterogeneity of the Pacific, both culturally, demographically, socioeconomically. It is, you know, it still has its natural beauty, but unfortunately that natural beauty as a result of climate change, environmental changes, and declining life expectancy with high mortality and the growing impact of non-communicable diseases is real. And thank you. And I'm going to offer, before I take any questions, if I can have a volunteer to respond to me and say thank you in one of the island languages. So you can pick a language, and then I'm happy to take questions. Meitaki from the Cook Islands. Thank you. And I have a gift for you. Well, so that brings me to the end. And if you have questions, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.